Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's District Administration Web Seminar, Reopening Strategies. 3 school districts share their plans for starting classes. Brought to you by the generous support of Cisco. Before we get underway today, a few housekeeping items. For any technical support, use the chat panel at the right of your screen and select my name, Jason York, and type your message if you're having any kind of technical issue. No computer speakers are preferred to listen privately. Please dial the phone number and access code, which I will post in the chat window in just a minute. We also have live Q&A today, so if you'd like to submit a question to our panelists at any time during the presentation, please use the Q&A panel at the bottom right of your screen and send your question to all panelists. Don't see a panel? Click the expand panel triangle in the front of any panel name. And if you need access to the presentation at a later time, everyone who registered and attended today will receive an email with links to the slides and the archive recording. And with that, I will now turn it over to Lenny Shad, who is the Chief Information Officer and Chief Innovation Officer here at District Administration, to lead our panel discussion. Lenny, it's great to have you with us today.
Great to be here. Good afternoon to everybody, or good morning, depending on where in the country you're at. It's my pleasure to be here. As Jason said, I'm the Chief Information and Innovation Officer for District Administration. I'm a former CIO, sat in your chairs out there, former CIO for Houston ISD and Katy ISD, respectively. Been in the public education arena since 2003, and I've had the fortune of leading a number of digital one-to-one initiatives in both districts. So I'm really excited to be here, excited to visit with some of the panelists and listen about what they're doing for the start of school. So we'll get going on it. I wanted to just do a quick introduction of our panelists. And so we'll get a little bit of background on who they are and what districts they're coming from. So we'll take care of some housekeeping right there. So our agenda, once we get done with our panelist introductions, we're going to have three topics related specifically to start of school. Overcoming the digital divide, building district security with agility and flexibility, and then professional development. What are we thinking about in terms of professional development? Targeting teachers, but thinking in the broader perspective, what are we going to do for all of our staff? And then we're going to have a great update on E-rate. As you know, there's been lots of conversations around E-rate and what can happen and what potential changes. And so we're going to have an individual come in and shine his expertise on the E-rate picture. So anxious to hear about that. All right, let's get started. And Kyle and I have known each other for a while. We're Texas compadres. So Kyle, why don't you tell us a little bit about Grapevine, Collieville, and what you guys are doing?
All right, thank you, Lenny. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Kyle Berger. I am the Chief Technology Officer in Grapevine, Collieville ISD. As you can see, we're located in North Texas. If you've ever been to North Texas area and landed at DFW Airport, that is right in the middle of our school district. We're about 14,000 students, and we've been a one-to-one school district K through 12 for the past 10 years. And I describe it as a 24/7, 365 one-to-one. So our devices have gone home, stayed home over the summer, and rotate with our students for the past 10 years. Prior to COVID, of course, 20 physical campuses and 1 official virtual school. But of course, now running all virtual until September 8th, and then we'll go looking at our online virtual mix as school starts from that area.
Perfect. I'm having a little issue with my mute button. It's slower than I want it to be. So thanks, Kyle. I appreciate your update. All right, Michelle and I are once again. It's so amazing how small the K-12 IT community is, right? And you know, I've worked with all of you before, so it's great to have you back together again. Michelle, tell us a little bit about Columbus City Schools. I think you're on mute, Michelle.
Okay, but my mute button's working very quickly, so luckily, right? So we're right in the heart of Ohio, the largest district. We have 51,000 plus students, 109 school buildings. We have approximately 4,000 teachers and 5,000 additional staff. Much like other schools right now, we're battling the same things that you are. We cover about 200 square miles in the city, so mostly metro areas and the outlying areas. We cover 200 square miles, and we bus about 23,000 students a day. So pre-COVID, we were doing just fine. However, not prepared at all on March 16th when we were all told we were going to be learning outside of the district. We were not a one-to-one district. We had never sent devices home with students. We had no student email. We had no digital academy. We had no communication platform for interacting with students and teachers, and we had no learning management system. So that was our pre-COVID look. We will be going 100% virtual for the first quarter, though.
So you've had an interesting 3 months then, haven't you?
Yes, we have.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you. All right, TJ, shine some light on us about Pasadena Unified.
Hello, everyone. I guess I'm that morning district since I'm on the West Coast, and it's only a little after 11 here. But I'm in Pasadena, California. We cover 3 cities, so we cover Sierra Madre, Pasadena, and Altadena. We have a little bit under 18,000 now, looking at current year enrollment. We unfortunately are one of the districts in the West that has suffered from declining enrollment over the years, just due to cost of living and other factors. But we have been a one-to-one school district, completely one-to-one for the last 3 years. This will be the 3rd consecutive year now. We have had an LMS system in place, and come March, we were in decent shape to pivot. However, since we had so many students and teachers that were still used to traditional face-to-face, even with a one-to-one environment, it was still a big shift to get that transitioned over at that turn of a dime in March. But we have revamped and retooled and looking forward to launching into this upcoming school year.
All right, perfect. You know, and TJ, I think that last point is really critical in that it didn't matter what your footprint and posture was going into COVID. If you were one-to-one or if you were like Michelle, not even close to it, this changed the landscape for everybody, right? And I think it has been such a disruptive change that it now has caused everybody to really rethink what they do, how they do it, and how they're going to measure. You know, up until about 3 or 4 weeks ago, the conversation was this hybrid model where some of our kids are going to be face-to-face, some of them are going to be remote, and then, you know, in the matter of about 7 days, you had virtually every district in the country saying we're going to start out remote in some form or fashion. I say all that to say the next school year is going to be a roller coaster, right? It's going to be full of change. It's going to be full of pivots, and we just got to get used to it. When you think about the digital divide, and pre-COVID, the digital divide was always about internet, device, and access. And I think what COVID did was it changed the narrative around digital divide from, it's not, do you have internet, yes or no? The question has become, do you have internet? If yes, what kind of internet? Because some of these internet plans, you had, you know, households that had mom, dad, and 3 kids all trying to work from home. And in the matter of about 3 days, their package was done, right? So it became a much broader question and conversation than just, do you have internet, yes or no? So I'm curious, as you guys look at what you experienced in March and April, and as you prepare for start of school, what are some of the things you've done to help bridge this digital divide? And so, TJ, let's start with you, because it seems like you were one of the ones that were kind of far along in this process. Tell us about what you did to help bridge this digital divide.
Well, in the prior to COVID, we had joined up with the Sprint Millions program, to where we had a hotspot initiative that we did for all of our high school students, to supply all those that didn't have internet connectivity at home with a hotspot to take home with their device. Much like Kyle, we're a 24/7 device take-home program for our students, so they keep them year-round. But we did have families that struggle with connectivity. Being that it primarily was for homework support prior to COVID, it wasn't too big of a deal. They logged in, were able to submit assignments and things like that. But once everyone made that pivot come March, we realized that as soon as we began testing out and pushing out synchronous learning as opposed to just like the asynchronous lessons that were being pressed before, we quickly learned that was not nearly going to be enough bandwidth to support, especially for families that had multiple students that might have been trying to share a hotspot or had other connectivity issues. We've since then have been looking at shifting and transitioning, still providing hotspots where needed, but for families that have densities. We're also a foothill district in San Gabriel Valley, those that are familiar with this area in California. We sit along the foothills, so cell signal is terrible. So in those families that live in some of those poor signal areas, as well as that have high density, we began partnering with our Spectrum cable modem companies and a couple of other ISP support companies to actually install connectivity in the house with Wi-Fi access, just so that they could have stronger bandwidth connectivity for students in larger families. But the quality aspect of it, them being able to connect, not losing students or having failures and causing frustrations in the household, it was a huge barrier for us. And that short timeline for the end of school year when we pivoted.
Yeah, you know, and that's interesting because it's the biggest barrier, one of the biggest barriers out there that every district is facing. Kyle, you guys are kind of attacking it in a different way, looking at more of a partnership with your city maybe and your community. Tell us about what you're doing to help bridge this.
Absolutely. Much like TJ, we started with the hotspot initiatives, and we've done that for a few years as well, but really needed ways to reach out in more broader areas. So we partnered with the cities that we cover here, and we've opened up community Wi-Fi networks to really help to expand the Wi-Fi areas that the community already provides. Our facilities, all of our campuses, we pushed our Wi-Fi signal to the edge of all of our properties to kind of open up anything that we can have as far as availability. Much like others too, we rolled out our bus fleet that had the Wi-Fi built in and kind of created some locations throughout. And then also worked with the city to kind of attach wireless cradle point access points onto construction signage. So if you think of the construction sign with a little flashing arrow you see on the highway, those have built-in solar panels, so we can drop that in a parking lot and say a low-income apartment complex or other area and at least broadcast signal out. And that's getting us pretty decent coverage, but also, like TJ mentioned, it's not enough for us looking down into the future. So we're actually looking at the expansion and build out of an LTE network to try to get better control and into the homes or apartments and houses of our students in need. And it's much like you mentioned too, Lenny, it's not just about having internet anymore, and even not just our students, for our staff too. You know, they say, I have this great internet plan. Here's my download rate. I said, yeah, but what's your upload side? You're sending all this video out now. You're not just downloading content. You're sending it out as a teacher. How do we evaluate that? So we're starting to really look at different ways to evaluate that from our instructional output side as well.
Perfect, Kyle. Let me ask you a question. When you're talking about potentially building out an LTE network, is this something that the school district is really trying to partner with the government agencies, your city, partner with some private funding sources, different things like that? Is it beyond just you guys trying to drive this, I guess is what I'm asking? Absolutely. So we're trying to tie it in with a partnership with our cities and smart city initiatives. That Cisco has great products and programs for smart cities. So building out LTE infrastructure that can work for public safety as well for us, and really expand the possibility for all of our entities to cross-use these networks and leveraging, you know, our water towers and between all of us, our infrastructure of height, I guess you could say, that we already have in place that can give us a little bit of a leg up to get this thing going. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, Michelle, it sounds like your situation was kind of like standing in front of the fire hydrant trying to take a drink of water. So this was Absolutely. One of many of your issues. So tell us when you start from ground zero. Tell us what you tried to do to even minimize this.
Yeah. So when you said, you know, we were looking at connectivity differently, well, we were really starting at square one. So I know that I have a limited time, so I'll try to hit the highlights, but we had scheduled, or our spring break was scheduled the week after we actually closed the building. So the students had a 2-week kind of an extended spring break. And in 10 days, the district completely rallied. So we prepped and distributed 25,000 Chromebooks to students who didn't have them. They came in and picked them up. We logged those all into our student information system. For the families that we did not hear from, we literally got on telephones and called. We made deliveries to homes. And then we got into the actual connections. So our Chromebooks do not have radios in them. So for those that didn't have any wireless access, we rallied around with every partner we could find and came up with about 2,000 hotspots. Mind you, the whole entire country was doing the same thing. So we were lucky to get 2,000. I think we ended up with about 3,000, and about 1,500 of them went out through the same method. People came and picked them up, signed them out. So that went really well, but we also did not have any digital curriculum. So while we were setting up while we were getting out the equipment and trying to get people connected, our curriculum team also put together a complete K through 12 curriculum to get us through the last, and resources to get us through the last 3 months of school. The other thing we did not have was a communication vehicle. Our students did not have email, so we also pushed out 51,000 email addresses to students in that 10 days so that we could communicate with them through email. That we also attached that to our student information system so our teachers could create rosters, and then WebEx or Cisco and CBTS, Cincinnati Bell, came to our rescue. And while we had 500 licenses for WebEx, they gave us across the board. We had 60-some thousand licenses to use during that COVID period to get us started. So we ran the rosters through that so that the teachers and IEPs and any kind of counseling that needed to happen could happen face-to-face with our students. So yeah, it was a lot, and so we did a lot. We're doing a lot of and have done a lot of the same things that both Kyle talked about, where we're working with our city now and providers to move into some kind of a structure where we have the internet connections into all of our homes. So we're using a lot of our CARES Act money that we received, a pretty good chunk of that, to provide internet service to families and to boost internet service to families, because a number of our families obviously have 3, 4, and 5 students in the house using their devices primarily at the same time. So we did have the opportunity to do a great summer school, so it was a pretty good pilot. Our teachers were phenomenal. So we've done, in 3 months, what we have done, we've probably done more than we have in my 21-year career at Columbus City Schools. I mean, we have rallied, and it's been a ton of work. But, yeah, we're in a decent place going forward.
Good. Before we leave this topic, I have a question for all of you. Have you done any work reaching out to churches, community centers, apartment complexes, restaurants, to help them build a wireless infrastructure for the individuals in their areas? If you have, can you just be really brief and just tell us what that's looked like and how receptible these different facilities have been to that conversation? TJ, I saw you nodding your head.
Yeah, here in Pasadena, we tried building out a partnership with the city, but they didn't have the bandwidth at that time to have a complete citywide wireless built out. But what we were able to partner on is we worked with all of our entities within the city, all 3 of our municipalities, and put together a collaborative list of all of the locations where the city had hotspot areas, like our Boys and Girls Clubs, churches, restaurants, group settings, like places where people could go. Now, we ran into additional challenges as our governor continued to lock down access and where families could go because people couldn't gather because of COVID-19 and all of the health concerns that raised. But everyone pushed out access points and all of their services to the edges of their property, much like what Kyle was saying. We did the same with their school district, so people could at least park in these vicinities or sit in their cars and still have access and connectivity for those that still didn't have true connection at home.
Perfect. Thank you.
That was published on our website as well for families to access so that they could actually see all the different areas where they could go. Yeah,
good idea. All right, as we move on to the second question, building district security and access from a home environment. You know, I think in March and April, our parents and our communities were very tolerant and very understanding of, you know, this caught everybody by surprise. As we start to look for at the start of school, I don't think there's going to be that high level of tolerance anymore. I think there's going to be an expectation that there was significant improvement from March to the start of school. One of the areas that I'm seeing really pick up from a parent concern perspective is security. Cybersecurity incidents at the homes are like 5 times higher than they've ever been. And I think general infrastructures are more at risk for those districts who weren't prepared for this. So as you think about what you've done since the pandemic hit and how you've made your district better, how you've made your students safer for the start of school, tell us a little bit about that kind of a story. So Kyle, why don't you start us off?
So for us, we really focused on the educational side first. We'd already done a lot of the technical infrastructure build out to protect our infrastructure here in the district and our endpoints. But sending all of our staff and our instructional staff through cybersecurity training, pretty in-depth 2-hour training program, because what was starting to happen, as you can imagine, is the threats have rapidly increased because the teacher is now getting emails from folks that they might not normally get emails from. And so they would get an email saying, hey, this is Johnny's dad. I've attached his artwork. Why don't you take a look at what that is? And then the next thing you know, they've opened this thing, and then here we go. Plus, with our teachers getting the attacks of possible pop-ups that, you know, Microsoft support wants to help. We want to help fix your machine all of a sudden, those kind of things. So a lot of education. We did a lot of inside internal phishing tests with our staff so we could really focus in on certain areas and help train them. And then on the opposite side for our students, the same, and our students' parents, to really help educate them about the environment. We create such a safe environment of our network here when the students are here, how they can try to do that at home by providing them resources such as Cisco's OpenDNS or Umbrella, as we call it on our side, as a great thing that they can do at home to protect their home network. So we actually provide parent classes to walk them through how they can do that to prepare their home network and protect it. And that's been very positive as well, because it really showed our community that we're not just about sending these devices home and just, you know, teaching the ABCs. We're about helping protect you and educate you about life in general in this new world that we're living.
Perfect. And that's, you know, there's this groundswell that's emerging of, you know, parents who are now saying this device has a remote camera, the webcam, it's going to be sitting in my kids' rooms. What are you doing to protect? Who has the ability to remote in? All of these are incredibly valid concerns when you look at what's going on in society in general. And I think it's really important that we as school leaders, technology leaders, paint a real nice picture for parents to understand what kind of security layers that we're putting in place. Michelle, what did you guys do in your school district in the area of safety and security?
A lot of what Kyle just said. Obviously, we did all of those same things. For our hot spots, those are limited to, you know, content that they could, there's certain content, lots of things are blocked. As a matter of fact, we blocked a little bit too much and they couldn't get to some of the work. So, but lots and lots and lots of education. Phishing obviously continues to be just a nightmare for us. We're really good, and Microsoft has a lot of tools that are helping us to identify those before they get out of hand. But another thing that we're doing with the email addresses, the students have to authenticate into anything that they're using from the district standpoint. So that's been helpful. We do a lot of multi-factor authentication for our teachers. We haven't rolled it out to the teachers yet. We will at the beginning of the school, well, what we're calling the beginning of the school year now. We'll be rolling that out. We did that for all of the administrative, all of our administrative and non-building personnel over the summer that needed it. You know, if it comes to it, we would do it for certain students. And we only allow you to, like our email addresses, they can't use those email addresses except for accepted sites. So we're not allowing them to set up their Facebook or their TikTok or any of those accounts with their student emails. So, you know, you're right. I mean, that's a continued issue, and the bad actors are just getting better and better and better at getting into our systems.
What type of awareness programs have you done with your parents and with your students? So when those devices are home, things to think about.
Are you asking me?
Yeah, Michelle, sorry.
Okay. Yeah, so every administrator or any employee in Columbus City Schools is required to take a cybersecurity course at the beginning of the year. We are getting ready to do some additional. Students, on the other hand, receive cybersecurity training every single year. You know, obviously it means a lot more now, so I think that will be, we'll definitely expand on that. I've done some things in our district to try to prevent phishing, such as dressed up as a, you know, I was out fishing, and it just jogs people's memories. So we've been trying to do some more relatable things for students as well. And I mean, it's been pretty effective. Actually, our students have been better stewards of using the internet than a lot of our adults have been. So, so again, it's a lot. They're just, they know what risk to take, where adults sometimes are the ones that get caught in the, oh, this looks legit. So
yeah. TJ, when you think about cybersecurity awareness, those are things like, how do you make people understand phishing and, you know, not to click on links? But there's also an element of digital citizenship. Like, what does it mean to be in the digital world? Are you guys tackling both in kind of a parallel path, or have you merged digital citizenship and cybersecurity awareness into one program?
For us, we've kind of begun merging the two together. We've always have had a very hardened footprint as far as our infrastructure and how we handle security internally. But once everyone was remote, staff and students alike, we definitely had to up our game and continue to push that message out. So we've had a big digital citizenship for our students, but also now pushing it out to our staff also, where the emphasis was primarily on just the kids. We now have a lot of our staff who aren't familiar with fully operating in a complete online environment. So there were things that they had to become accustomed to and learn how to adapt and work around and within, just like the students would. But then it was also enforcing and reiterating the security concerns. So we do a weekly Tech Tuesday where two of my educational coaches host different topics that they do trainings on. They always start with a security portion of it to take people through. We also do a weekly Tech Bites that goes out to all of our students, parents, families, like a mass blast, and also gets attached on our district webpage, where they talks about any new security alerts, spear phishing attempts, things like that that's happening or that we're seeing. But we've definitely hardened our environment so that students can only be contacted by internal addresses or a handful of secure addresses, like Michelle and Kyle both mentioned. Staff, on the other hand, still have, you know, access to everything, but we definitely continue to update like our firewalls and block out addresses that have been known and put on watch lists. We've partnered with our county and other districts so that we have a list where we're also updating each other, like be aware of these addresses or add these to your firewall. So that's been helpful as well. But definitely continuing to harden that approach and how we attack it. We also do white hacking, if you will, pinhole testing. We've had events where we've had outsiders attempt to social network or get into phone call conversations with some of our staff or send emails with a bogus email address just to see like who catches it, who doesn't. And then for those that past, basically saying like, no, this is bogus or don't respond. We acknowledge that, and those that do get compromised, and we go back and have a positive conversation like, hey, you know, in this test that took place, did you realize that? And kind of have those follow-up conversations as well. But it's definitely a moving target and an ongoing thing that has to be addressed.
Thank you. Kyle, you had touched on both digital citizenship and cybersecurity. Are you guys kind of merging those two into one conversation, or are they parallel paths that are occurring?
We're actually merging it as well, so it's not like, you know, these two different areas like it used to be, you know, stop and go to the computer lab and do your stuff and come back to the classroom. It's merged all in what our digital citizenship is, especially for our students. It's just the way of living online nowadays, so we find it easier to merge that together for our students overall. Yeah,
you know, and I think we could spend $1 billion on our infrastructure from a cybersecurity perspective, and still our biggest risk is anybody who has that keyboard and clicks that button, and now we're exposed. So, you know, it's got to be just this awareness. TJ, I like your idea of creating these little safety moments. I know when I worked in the oil field, in the oil industry, every time we went out on a rig, we had to do a little safety video, right? It was a 2-minute safety video, and it was non-negotiable. I think, you know, something like that just becomes the social norm. Every time we have a gathering, the first 2 minutes are going to be something on cybersecurity. I think that once that kind of becomes an accepted practice, we're in a much better position. Before we leave this topic, I want to talk about strategic planning in this area. And, you know, strategic planning for the long time has been 3 to 5 years. We've always talked in those time frames. When COVID hit, what I've seen in the districts that I've been working with, it's not years anymore. So we've kind of merged into this strategic sprint, right? And our first sprint is start of school. And then our next sprint might be, you know, winter break. And then the final sprint might be end of school. But we can no longer plan in these year-long time frames because we've got so much heavy lifting to do. Are you guys seeing that kind of change in how you're doing strategic planning? It's no longer this year-long thing, but we're really embracing strategic sprints. Kyle, I see you shaking your head. You want to give us some feedback on that?
Yeah, we really have shifted a lot of focus. So like everybody else, we do have our traditional strategic plan, but now we're really narrowing that down to almost 2-month windows. That was even shorter for a while there, to be honest, because of the rapid changing from the government level and everything else. As you know, we're on plan A, B, C, all the way to Z within 2 weeks due to all the changes. So having those shorter cycles makes us a lot more nimble and a lot of better use of our time because things are changing so rapidly. Yeah,
exactly. Michelle, how about you? Have you kind of seen this embracing the strategic sprint mentality?
Oh, 100%. We kind of live by the Tuesdays and Thursdays when our governor gives us a little update. And, you know, every once in a while, I think that he does kind of talk to us before he says it because we're making changes on the fly before it's even announced. But, yeah, I would like to say we're at the every 2 months, but we're sprinting every 24 hours right now. We really thought we were going back full time until 2 weeks ago, and then we thought we were blended, and last week we decided 100% virtual. So I still feel like it's a sprint every 24 hours right now. Again, still long-term planning, still looking at all of the bigger picture, but, you know, really trying to get the best of what we can.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what we've got to do. I can't tell, is TJ offline, or TJ, are you still online?
I'm back now. I don't know what happened. I got kicked off for a second, but I was able to jump back in.
Ah, well, good. Welcome back. We missed you, TJ. We missed you. So, were you able to hear the conversation about strategic sprints?
Yes.
Okay,
I dropped out right after.
Have you seen your district kind of embracing that mentality?
Oh, it's day to day. I think Michelle hit the nail on the head. I mean, 24 hours sometimes seems like a courtesy. As rapidly as we have to pivot and make changes at this point. We just refer to it as the constant game of Jumanji. So we're like in day 212, I think, at this point that we kind of have the internal coin joke going on. But it's,
exactly,
you know, we get governor and county and city updates and announcements almost daily now. So every day you're watching to see like, okay, what's the new pivot? What's the new level of the game we've entered today that we now have to adjust and be able to shift to? And the difficult task has just been trying to keep all of our administrators, our principals, our parents, you know, even students, like their spirits lifted and knowing like, look, we're going to work with you, be with you to support you every step of the way, regardless of what happens. But we're all in this together, and keeping people focused on that seems to have helped. But it's almost hourly.
Yeah, exactly. It really is. All right, this last one, you know, I think you could devote an entire webinar on this last question. Because it is the 800-pound gorilla facing every district in the country. So I want to spend a little bit of time on this one because, you know, I talked about the tolerance of our parents in the beginning in March and April, and the recognition that that's not going to be there for start of school. And the reality of a COVID slide, if our teachers and our school districts aren't prepared for remote learning, becomes really real. And so as you guys think about the work that you did between March and April and start of school in the area of professional development, let's start with teachers. Give me a couple of things you guys think your districts did really well, and then let's talk about some things that didn't go well, but here's what we're planning to do, make it better once school starts. Michelle, let's start with you.
So, like I said, we did a lot in 10 days. I couldn't put a price on what our teachers did to prepare for our students to come just for those last few weeks of school. So I think outside of anything was just everyone's absolute mission for our students to be able to learn in those last few months. And we didn't make it easy because our students didn't have the resources in their hands. So our teachers and curriculum group worked with us very quickly to say, what you put a device in someone's hands, what's the easiest thing for them to get to? So what I didn't mention before, and what has been very helpful for us, even on the security side, is our portal. We have a Citrix portal that the majority of our users come through. So we're able to control a lot of the security pieces still in the back end. So I just think the teamwork and the ability, just because we were at such a disadvantage going into this, was something that worked well. Communication was probably our biggest downfall. As with every district these days, we speak a lot of languages in our district, and we have a very high population of special education students and critically challenged, physically challenged students. That probably, it wasn't that we weren't trying, but that was probably the first, those would be the things that I would say suffered the most, is reaching.
Okay, perfect. Perfect, thank you. TJ, how about you? What did you guys do between end of school and then over the summer? And then what are you planning to do for once school starts?
Well, we've taken on a lot over the summer. We've switched out our LMS systems. We've shifted over to WebEx as our primary communication platform tool that we're using, both for staff as well as embedded into our LMS system for students' use for their asynchronous learning. And then the biggest one that we found as a hard lesson learned at the end of last school year, come March, was having everybody dispersed and remote made it difficult for our teachers and families to actually communicate. Because while they were trying to use free voice tools and other things like that, they would get random numbers or unknown callers, and people weren't answering for a lot of the spam and security concerns that we were just talking about earlier. So we were able to embed our actual phone platform into Cisco's team solution so that our parents can be contacted by staff from their school site numbers that they're used to hearing from or they're used to seeing. So when they see a call coming in, they know it's an actual district employee or someone calling them to inform them of something. It's been a huge help so far. We saw a lot of disconnect, especially for like our SPED population that was mentioned, where they were doing a lot of teletherapy and support sessions, but they had a lot of miscommunications because of that. And as people were transitioning and trying to get used to checking student emails and things of that nature, it made it a big pain point. So that was one of the huge tech rollouts that I think was a big shift from how things operated at the end of last year to this year. The other piece is just the embedding of a true online curriculum and content that was designed for a complete 100% online environment. So teachers have to do less of trying to convert their in-class curriculum and lesson plans that they had established and trying to teach and integrate and work with students to having an actual curriculum and lesson plan that was fully designed for asynchronous remote learning, which is or synchronous remote learning, I should say, which seems to be a big win for us because our teachers were like, thank you, God, for helping getting something off the ground so we don't have to do as big of a heavy lift and build the plane while we're flying it with students.
Yeah. So, TJ, did you guys do anything specifically for your teachers to help them understand what delivering instruction in a remote setting looks like and give them some best practices and different things like that? What kind of professional development did you do around just teachers giving instruction remotely?
So it's ongoing. We had a series of professional development we did at the end of the school year before teachers left, and then we've actually now shifted our pupil-free days, moved them to the front of the school year so we could push our start dates back, and we'll be doing another series of professional development to do just what you described now with all of our teachers and staff. As we speak, we're in the middle of doing a training session with principals, so I was jumping back and forth prior to our meeting starting, and then I'll be jumping back into the principal trainings that we're doing today that we currently have going on as well. But it's nonstop. It's going to be ongoing to get all of our staff and everyone prepared because this is it's different. It's a different environment for them. It's not the traditional brick and mortar that anyone's just used to.
No, and I mean, this is something that takes years to get. The way a teacher instructs is very personal. So
yeah.
It's going to be different for every teacher. So I think having patience and tolerance and lots of support is going to be critical. Kyle, what are you guys doing in your district around professional development and summer work and then ongoing work?
So we really took kind of that sprint approach like you talked about. So our first sprint was all about connection and communication. So it was a lot of focus with our teachers, leveraging our Cisco foundation of turning on Jabber, kind of like what TJ mentioned, so that our phones could be used from their home computer or from their district devices to call on the same numbers. We had already been using WebEx for more administrative, getting that to all of our teachers and get them really embedded. So the focus those first couple of weeks was on the connectivity. Let's make sure we're connecting with our students, getting them online, have that open communication going. Then we moved to kind of the instructional delivery aspect of it, much like you mentioned. One of our advantages is we've had a virtual school for about 7 years, so we were able to leverage those teachers we had to start doing PLC and really start helping some of our brick and mortar teachers to understand the difference and start helping that model going. And then that transitioned this summer to kind of like what TJ said, implementing of a new LMS. Let's get our content all in there so we can have the same effect of curriculum delivery if you're in person or if you're at home. With that too, it's training our teachers on the technology we've added in our classroom. We've added cameras in all of our classroom so that we can live stream our teachers' instructions from the classroom out, so teaching them all of that. And then the final phase is going to be, the rinse and repeat. After this first week here pretty soon is really going to be debriefing quickly with the teachers to see how do we need to tweak it, where are our weaknesses, where do you need more support, and then also getting that feedback from our parents and our students. But I think one of the big things that was an aha moment is in the traditional sense of even a one-to-one, and TJ probably knows this, when the student's in that classroom, physical classroom, and that computer breaks, they can close the lid and the instruction keeps going on with our teachers. Teachers always have known how to jump to plan B in the classroom. But when that happens when the kid's at home and that is the only means of connecting, it's a whole different scenario. So teaching our teachers how to be nimble with that and help work around that's been very important as well.
Excellent. Okay. Well, great. Thank you. Well, at this point, I want to give some time because I know we have quite a few questions. So I want to give us time to get the questions out there. So Dan, the man with E-rate, shine some light on us, please.
Yeah, no, thanks so much, Lenny. And as Lenny mentioned, my name is Dan Leister. I'm the E-rate team lead at Cisco for our public sector funding office. And Lenny, I want to give a special thank you to you and the district administration for hosting this. And then for Kyle, TJ, and Michelle, thank you so much for the insight that you're providing to some of the challenges that you faced, as well as what you're facing as we look at this new model of teaching and learning. I think when we look at everything you just discussed, is an important discussion of that is the funding piece. How are we going to fund this? And we know that E-rate is a huge funding source. And Jason, if we go to the next slide, I think there's a couple things that where you can help as well that I wanted to make you aware of. About a week and a half ago, the FCC released the draft eligible service list. Based upon the Category 2 report and order that came in December, we were expecting to see some additional eligibility of network security beyond basic firewall. And with the draft eligible service list for E-rate year 24 or E-rate year 2021, there were no changes to that. So one of the things that we would recommend is for all schools to voice their opinion. Comments are open now. You can comment on the draft eligible service list from now till August 20th, and then reply to comments are due on September 4th. So based upon, you're just talking a lot about security. In fact, in a recent poll that Funds for Learning did for E-rate for last year, 98% of schools have said that they need additional support for network security. And I think your insights that you just provided, it's a real threat and something we have to be aware of. And I would encourage anyone that feels like they should is to make comments to the FCC on the draft eligible service list. The other is the Form 470 are out for E-rate year 24. You can log into the EPC tool and look at those. And then Cisco, we will be hosting John Harrington. Right now, I have it here for August 26th. We may have to change that to August 25th. But really, it's going to be a panel discussion with myself and John Harrington to talk about what's going on with E-rate, as well as additional fundings. Shelby has just, they just sent up to Congress some recommendations for additional connectivity dollars, as well as security and device dollars. I think that analogy of we're in Jumanji day 212, TJ, I feel like the same thing because it's changing hourly. And it's like that strategic sprint that you talked about, Lenny, is it's changing daily, and every 24 hours is something new. So be looking for some of that information as well, and please voice your opinion. As we go into the next slide, there are some changes that are going to go into effect for E-rate year 2021. I think the most important is the budgets have been reset. So your Category 2 budgets have been reset at $167 per student that can be spent over the 5-year period. And then a couple other changes that I think will help with some of that strategic planning is that Category 2 budgets are now done at the school district level and library system basis instead of individual schools. So it allows you to more flexibility for you of how those monies are spent with your E-rate dollars. And then I think that the other one is the E-rate transfer rule. So starting in E-rate year 2021, for any equipment that was purchased with E-rate dollars, is that can be transferred within the district with you no longer have to wait 3 years. So I think there's a lot going on. As I mentioned, I'm a part of the E-rate or the public sector funding team here at Cisco. We're monitoring the CARES Act, we're monitoring grants, bonds, but there's a lot going on, and hopefully as we move through our Jumanji board in additional days, we'll find out more and there'll be an end in sight. So TJ, that analogy is going to stick with me for sure. So if anybody has any questions, please put it in the chat window. And Lenny, I want to make sure we give enough time for the Q&A that we can answer all those, because you can tell it's been a good discussion because there are a lot of questions that have come in.
Okay, perfect. Well, I think Mary, I think you're gonna be the Q&A host. So take it away.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. And again, we're going to try and get through these questions as much as possible. So I'm going to toss the first one up. Once state and healthcare directives allow for in-person instruction, what are you doing to prepare for that? And what are the biggest obstacles you face to return to in-person learning? And, let's, TJ, do you want to take that one?
Oh, that's a sore subject right now. It's tough in the sense that, like I said, we had all of our teachers go home as students last year, but we also sent a lot of our business staff home because no one essentially could work at that point. And for California, we actually got to a point where they said everyone shut down unless it was absolutely mission critical for you to be in office, do not show up. So we literally had staff that were taking home devices, and we had to set up VLAN connections and teach people that VPN access does not actually give you internet access and all sorts of fun things. But now it's undoing all of that. And the thought of trying to bring everybody back and then reconnecting all of those desktops and devices that were taken out while still trying to support teachers and students in a remote environment. So it's going to be a fun times, but we are structuring and putting together all of the PPE and spacing out our desks and then starting those transitions to start shifting people back where needed. But because it's still so touch and go, I mean, while we had things opening up, our governor refers to it as the switch dimming now. We've started shutting things down again because of all of the outbreaks that were taking place. So we had just sent out a message saying, all right, district office staff, district service center staff, school site support staff, we're going to start bringing people back and we're getting things re-implemented. And then the governor announced the next level of Jumanji, and we never mind, stay home, don't bring your stuff back in. Those that brought it, come back and get it and take it home because you can't come back yet. And so it's day by day. So right now we're purely focusing on staff that needs to be in office, and everyone else as much as possible we still have working remote.
Awesome, thank you.
Hey,
well,
Mary,
that kind of relates to, yeah, go ahead.
Mary, one quick thing, sorry. One of the things in the districts that I'm working with that is probably causing them the most angst is how do you juggle the master schedules, right? So master scheduling for remote has the potential to look completely different for face-to-face. And you could do that if you started the year out that way, but then how do you all of a sudden flip after everybody being remote? So I think that's one of the areas that is causing a lot of issues and a lot of just challenges. If I start remote and I come back now half and half, what do my schedules look like?
And let me add one thing too, Mary, that I didn't hear. All of the same for us, but busing. If we get to a level of Jumanji of orange or yellow, we are allowed to return to the buildings with 9 to 10 students per bus. We bus 23,000 students a day, morning and afternoon. So bell schedules have to change to allow for that. So yeah, transportation for us is a real issue.
Oh, absolutely. So Michelle, another one that is in the chat is, are teachers required to report to their schools to teach remote learning instead of from home?
No,
I think we're allowing that.
Yeah, we're actually more encouraging because we provided them with equipment to be able to do that. So most of our teachers have been preparing to teach from home for this first quarter.
Yeah, agreed. TJ, we had one question early on, and I think you might have done it, but just again, as you start the school year, what's your plan? All remote, correct? And you're just adjusting day by day?
Correct. We actually had 2 tracks from the very beginning because we had such a high population when we announced that we were opening up in a hybrid model to still support not distance learning, but social distancing for students and teachers within the classrooms. So we had a broken up schedule where it was going to be a few days in, a few days off, and rotating what students came into place. But at the same time, we were looking at launching a complete online program that was going to happen simultaneously. Then when things switched and everyone had to go remote, it's now just everyone's working remotely for the opening of school year. To handle some of the scheduling issues, we began attacking it for our secondary groups within like a block schedule that would make it a little bit easier. So if we do get the green light to transition back on campus at some point, the schedule still pretty much mirrors what we were looking at in the hybrid model. The only thing that will really be changing is what days people show up physically on campus as far as what cohort they're in for our students in secondary and elementary. But that's been the way we've been trying to tackle it and remain nimble and flexible enough to be able to adjust on the fly as the different announcements come out.
Yeah, and isn't that interesting? We now, nimble and agile is the way of the day, and so we love that. Kyle, I'm going to pass this one over to you, and then others, if you do something different, please interject after Kyle answers. But how have you managed your technical support staff from supporting teachers and students to now supporting parents and the home technology support? And with that, did you have to increase your staff to do that? Kyle?
Absolutely. So, of course, all of our traditional support staff rotated to online support. And we expanded our help desk hours a little bit further, like 7 in the morning to 7 at night. We initiated chat ability into our help desk system to try to encourage those means. Of course, we had the call-in numbers as well and a lot of outreach. But then we started to, our expansion, at least coming into this year, because of what we learned, was to start creating somewhat of an instructional help desk geared towards just the parent aspect of it. So light helping the parents on a little bit of troubleshooting, but more on technical. How do I navigate inside of Canvas? How do I see this in Seesaw? Or I can't. So we've taken some of our instructional para positions or paraprofessionals that do not have anything to do right now because we're not physically here, and we repurposed them to our help desk. The other thing that we've done is we've expanded and created contactless tech support. So we placed locker systems outside of our buildings to provide 24-hour access to device swap and access. So again, when that student's device is broken or that parent calls our device is broken, we can dispatch them to locations all over our district and tell them, go to locker A1, here's the combination, go ahead and pick up that loaner device, put your broken one in there, and we'll get that fixed. That way, we're eliminating any time restraints for those parents and also the interaction for possible COVID exchange or anything of that nature. So we're continuing to tweak the models, but that's kind of where we're at right now as far as technical support.
Oh, thanks for sharing that locker idea. Good idea. TJ or Michelle, anything different to add?
I'll just add that we do same as above, not the locker. I wrote that one down. But we do Tech Tuesdays as well, and we've done that throughout the summer, and that's for anybody, parents. We have every single one of our techs, which is 30 plus our help desk. We have about 50 people on the line that will answer just anything from how do I turn on my computer to, how does our student, send in information? How do we get our computer repaired? So Tech Tuesday has been really popular, and I assume once we start back full time that we will expand that as well. But we also have community partners. The library just offered us 25 people to expand our help desk that will take just basic questions for us. So there'll be an option on our auto dialer to say, if you have a question about this, hit 1 and it'll transfer immediately to our library.
Oh, how nice is that? Fantastic. TJ, your thoughts? Anything?
I too will be stealing Kyle's locker idea. That was a good one. I didn't think of that. We actually have a curbside support. It's still touchless, but it's manned by our technology staff. Initially, for the end of the school year last year, we had them establish 5 days a week, still worked off of a ticketing and appointment center to where they had appointments and time slots to where they could come up. They did the system swaps or dropped off devices and had times to come back and pick them up after servicing or things of that nature as well. And it actually worked out well. We too extended our telephone support for our help desk groups who are doing a lot of remoting in and troubleshooting and taking care of issues remotely, so that it prevented families from even having to use the curbside support, but that was the last tier should they not be able to fix anything over the phone. So both of those have worked out great for us so far, and we'll be continuing into the next school year as well.
Oh, fantastic. Lenny, that's the questions. I'm going to pass it back to you.
All right. Perfect timing. We are at the top of the hour. Dan and Michelle, TJ, Kyle, thank you so much. Taking busy time, taking your time away when it's a very busy effort going on. You guys were great. Got a lot of good insight out there. So really appreciate you taking the time. Jason, I'm going to wrap it up and turn it over to you to close this out. Thanks, everybody, and best of luck to everyone out there for their start of school.
All right. Thanks very much, Lenny. Great insights from our district leaders here in Cisco on, reopening strategies here during these surreal times. District administration is the leader in editorial coverage of news, trends, and current issues in K-12 management. You can subscribe for free and stay up to date through our print magazine, digital edition, email newsletters, and web seminars like the one you heard here today. The archive recording of this web seminar will also be available for you to review and share with members of your team at the following URL, and everyone who registered or attended today will receive a link to these slides as well as the recording. So on behalf of District Administration, this is Jason York. Thank you for joining us, everybody, today, and have a great one.